Good day, everyone. Today, we will be presenting our topic, Ethics, Anonymity, and Personal Identity in the Wired World.
Next is anonymity. Anonymity means that the real author of the message is not shown. Anonymity can be implemented to make it impossible or very difficult to find out the real author of a message. Anonymity is not something which was invented with the internet, and it has occurred throughout history. Examples are William Shakespeare is probably a pseudonym, and the real name of this famous author is not known and will probably never be known. And another is in history, it has been common that women used male pseudonyms and for Jews to use in societies where their religion was persecuted. Even though anonymity and pseudonymity is not something new with the internet, the net has increased the ease for a person to distribute anonymous and pseudonymous messages. In the simplest case, a person sends an email or writes a Usenet news article using a falsified name. Most mail and news software allows the user to specify whichever name they prefer and make no check or of the correct identity.
Digital identity. What is it and how is it exposed? What is digital identity? Digital identity is all of the available online information of an individual, company, or an electronic device. There's also data on the internet that can be traced back to you. This refers to data such as pictures, your account profiles, and so on. It is also possible to have more than one identity in multiple communities, meaning you can make more than one account on Twitter or Instagram, but it still leads back to you. What is digital identity made up of? It has two broad categories: your digital attributes and your digital activities. Your digital attributes include your date of birth, your bank credentials, IDs, your biometrics, and your email addresses. Meanwhile, your digital activities include your likes, comments, tweets, the pictures you've uploaded online, your purchase in history, your search queries, your general cell phone usage, and so on. How is digital identity information being exposed? Your digital identity acts as a form of currency on the internet. It gives you access to your accounts and allows you to engage in online activities. The fact that your personal information exists online means that it is subject to hacks, breaches, copycatting, and theft. Here are some examples wherein your digital identity can be exposed through the use of deepfake videos, wherein person A is in the video, however, person B's face has been edited to be on person A's face, thus creating a fake video. Another thing is by connecting to public Wi-Fi networks, unsecured websites, having weak passwords, and also a marketplace called the dark web, wherein identity data is acquired, sold, or dumped.
Ethical issues of online anonymity. Online anonymity is actually great. It protects the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression of people online. But is it without fault, or is it always a good thing? So let's dive into its ethical issues. So we question, what are its ethical issues? With online anonymity comes the absence of attribution and the absence of accountability. Also, it has the issues of the encouragement of disinhibition and the rise of the individuation. So, disinhibition is saying or doing something on a whim without thinking in advance of what could be the unwanted or even dangerous result. Often, this is rude and offensive. The individuation is an individual's loss of self-awareness and concern for self-evaluation in group setting, allowing the individual to engage in anti-normative behavior. So, the 4 points mentioned here, the absence of attribution, the absence of accountability, the encouragement of disinhibition, and the rise of the individuation, work together to contribute to the argument that online anonymity can make people behave considerably worse online than if they were having a physical face-to-face conversation with others. Makes sense. If a person cannot be traced and be liable for his actions due to his anonymity, what's stopping him from being able to do immoral acts? So now that we have explained the issues, the ethical issues of online anonymity, now let's look at the cases where these issues are seen. As said already, online anonymity removes the restrictions for people to behave in an ethical manner that they do in real life. It can encourage immoral, repulsive, and even criminal activities. Examples of these are misinformation and cybercrimes such as bullying. These two things are really widespread in Filipino online communities. We see fake news being promulgated online whose original poster we cannot trace, we cannot identify in real life. The same goes for cybercrimes, cyberbullying, which anonymous people have more courage to do. Going further with examples that involve more anonymity online than just using fake names or identities, we have the cases of illegal gambling, child pornography, and even black market of human and drug trafficking, which requires layers of encryption to ensure online anonymity. So, with these things, it can be said that online anonymity is not always without fault. It's not always a good thing. It also has its ethical issues.
For the fourth part, we will discuss digital divide. What is digital divide? Digital divide refers to the gap between demographics and region that have access to modern information and communications technology and those that don't. Though the term now encompasses the technical and financial ability to utilize available technology, along with access to the internet, the gap it refers to is constantly shifting with the development of technology. Digital divide exists between developed and developing countries, urban and rural populations, young and educated versus older and less educated individuals, and men and women. Types of digital divide. Beyond the gaps between developed and developing countries, rural and urban population, and men and women, there are other types of digital divide. First is access divide. This is the most visible digital divide. It refers to the socio-economic differences among people and the impact on their ability to afford the devices necessary to get online. In developing countries, many people have limited access to technology or the internet and do not have the skills necessary to use it effectively. The second type is use divide. This refers to the difference in the level of skills possessed by individuals. There is a generation gap when it comes to the skills necessary to use the internet. It is also affected by the quality of education that an individual receives. Younger educated people tend to have more skills than the older, less educated ones. The third and last type of digital divide is quality of use gap. This measure is a little more complicated. It refers to the different ways that people use the internet and the fact that some people are far more able to get the information they need from it than others. 3 stages of digital divide. In 2006, a web usability consultant, Jacob Nielsen, wrote an article that got to the heart of our understanding of digital divide. In his article, he breaks the digital divide into 3 stages: the economic divide, the usability divide, and the empowerment divide. Economic divide. This is what many call the digital divide. The economic divide is the idea that some people can afford to have a computer and internet access, while others cannot. Usability divide. Usability is concerned with the fact that technology remains so complicated that many people couldn't use a computer even if they got one for free. And even for those who can use a computer, accessing all the benefits of having one is beyond their understanding. Lastly, empowerment divide. Empowerment is the most difficult to solve. It is concerned with how we use the technology to empower ourselves. Very few users truly understand the power that digital technologies can give them. Consequences of digital divide. Access to the internet was seen as a luxury, and disparities in digital access were seen in largely the same terms. However, there is now widespread consensus that technological discrimination is a form of social exclusion because it deprives certain citizens of essential resources for wealth development. The impact of the phenomenon reached many people in several important ways. First is lack of communication and isolation. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought into sharp focus the isolation that people without internet access or skills can quickly experience. This can have serious concomitant effects, from not being able to secure appointments for vaccination against the coronavirus, to limiting individuals' job prospects and affecting their mental health. Second is barriers to education. As education is increasingly delivered online, those without the resources to access the internet, including school children limited to remote learning during the pandemic, can be cut off from opportunities to develop their skills. As a result, children may have educational gaps, and adults may miss out on job opportunities or be unable to gain the basic skills necessary to contribute to their community. The third and last consequence is worsening gender discrimination. As noted above, the digital divide also exacerbates many existing forms of discrimination. One of the most widespread is gender discrimination. Women who lack equal access to the internet are unable to gain an education or information that could help them challenge their status. Programs that aim to combat aspects of digital divide. In recent years, programs have been launched that aim to combat particular aspects of digital divide. The Alliance of Affordable Internet aims to reduce the cost of broadband internet in specific areas in the world. Starlink provides high-speed internet and global coverage at affordable prices via satellites it has launched into space.
Traditional media. So, what is traditional media? Before the advent of digital media, every type of mass communication was available. This includes television, radio, newspapers, books, and magazines are all examples of this. Media that does not use the internet is also known as the offline media. So for the examples of traditional media, this includes billboards, radio, newspaper, TV, and direct mails, which consists of written materials like books, magazines, or written mails. So what is the importance of traditional media? Traditional media is still the most reliable news source, and it is crucial for brand messaging since it is instantly recognizable. It is instantly recognizable because newspapers, magazines, radio, and television will always be familiar to people of all ages, as they have been around for decades, and especially for newspapers date back centuries. Is traditional media still relevant to this day? Despite the existence of digital media, traditional media is still relevant and important. This is because traditional media has a broad but targeted audience. Traditional news organizations have spent years creating audiences of readers, listeners, and watchers, and they are experts at reaching out to them. This includes the news organizations of global news networks such as CNN or Fox News, or here in the Philippines like the TV Patrol News Network or GMA News Network, which have spent years creating audiences and creating reliable news source. Traditional media continues to be a reliable source of information. When it comes to the news, nothing beats a well-balanced factual report.
The next topic is new media. So, what is new media? New media is defined as interactive forms of communication on the internet, including social networking sites, podcasts, blogs, and virtual worlds. The new media revolution began in 1971 when the first email was sent. Now, for the characteristics of new media. The first one is digital. With the growth of digital technology in the 1990s, the vast majority of information is now converted, stored, and transmitted as binary code, a series of ones and zeros. Additionally, qualitative information has today become digitalized. Next is interactivity. Comparing old media to the new media, the old media tended to be very much of a one-way affair, with audiences always on the receiving end. However, new media is much more of a two-way affair, and it allows consumers and users to get more involved. Next is hypertext or links. These are common features of new media, which allows users more freedom of choice over how they navigate the different sources of information available to them. Next, global networks. New media has also facilitated cultural globalization. We now interact much more globally and via virtual networks of people rather than locally. Virtual worlds. New media presents to us a very different reality from face to face to lived reality. For most of us, this means a very fast paced flow of information with numerous products. Lastly, is simulation. Simulation goes a step beyond the virtual nature of new media as usual. Simulation is most obviously experienced in computer games, which provide an immersive experience for users into a virtual life that is simulated through digital technology. Next are the three C's of new media communication. First is connect. New media connects people who would not normally have the chance to interact. This helps the proliferation of idea sharing between individuals. Second is create. New media is a tool for creating a great number of things, from photo editing to virtual lives. Third is collaborate. New media allows people to work together over great distances and make business transactions around the world. Here we have examples of new media. We have Spotify, Axie, League of Legends, Google Docs, Facebook, Webtoon, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Zoom. Disadvantages of new media. Misinformation spreads like wildfire. We can live in an ideological bubble. There is fierce media competition. There is a wider customer base for companies large and small. And lastly, children can access inappropriate information more easily. Advantages of new media. Information production is no longer just for the elites. National borders are less of a barrier. Minority views and opinions can gain traction. We can stay in touch whenever and wherever we are. And lastly, news is instantaneous.
Personal identity. What is personal identity? Personal identity is the unique numerical identity of a person over time. Discussions regarding personal identity typically aim to determine the necessary and sufficient conditions under which a person at one time and a person at another time can be said to be the same person, persisting through time. The term personal identity means different things to different people. Psychologists use it to refer to a person's self-image, to one's beliefs about the sort of person one is and how one differs from others. In philosophy, the term normally refers to philosophical questions about ourselves that arise by virtue of our being people. Questions that may otherwise have little in common. Some philosophers use the term more loosely and include such topics as the nature of self-knowledge, self-deception, rationality, and the will. The five aspects of personal identity. The first one is interest. The second one is likes and dislikes. The third one is talents and abilities. The fourth one is values and beliefs. And the last one is the goals. So this all contribute to self-image or your unique identity as a person. So people who can easily describe these aspects of their identity typically have a fairly strong sense of who they are. How social media affects personal identity. Social media enables identity expression, experimentation, something natural for the human experience. It is the agencies in real life, which provide a source of names for different sectors that inspires the internet communities and the interactions they make within themselves. Why is our personal identity important? First, maintaining self-identity is important because it strengthens your character. That is when we know who we are, have confidence in ourselves, and are able to identify our strengths. We emerge as stronger individuals. Second, it keeps us unique and distinguishes us from everyone else.
What elements comprise a person's personal identity? Many elements comprise a person's personal identity. These elements relate to what make us who we are as humans. Some of these elements are a choice and others we are born with or have no control over. Some aspects of our personal identity include our skin color, ethnicity, religion. A lot of the time, our race and ethnicity play a significant role in how we see ourselves, especially if we feel that we are different from the majority of those who will live in the same community. Our religion, which is more than likely the same as our parents, also shapes how we see ourselves. For the most part, we don't have control over these elements of personal identity. Of course, one can always change religious beliefs. But if you were born into a family that holds certain beliefs, you will likely carry these beliefs with you into adulthood. When it comes to our personal identity, there are some things we can change. There are also many things we can change. It is up to us how we want to show off our clothes, hairstyle, piercings, and tattoos through these things. It's also possible to put ourselves in situation that will change how we think of ourselves as well. For example, one can travel alone and learn what it takes to be independent and completely responsible for one's life. Of course, there are certain experiences that we have no control over, such as the loss of a family member or experiencing love. These experiences also shape who we are and how we view ourselves.
So, good day everyone. And now, I will be discussing is online personal identity crisis. So, what is online personal identity crisis? An online personal identity crisis is a developmental event that involves a person questioning their sense of self or place in the world, and even in online world. The concept originates in the work of developmental psychologists who believe that the formation of identity was one of the most important conflicts that people face. It is an identity crisis is a time of intensive analysis and exploration of different ways of looking at oneself. Developing a sense of identity is important during the teenage years, though the formation and growth of identity are not confined to adolescence only. Online personal identity is something that shifts and changes throughout life as people confront new challenges and tackle different experiences. Thus, an identity crisis can occur at any age. Next is symptoms of an identity crisis. A person going through an identity crisis may find themselves preoccupied with certain questions, like number one, what am I passionate about? Number two, what are my values? Number three, what is my roles in the society or in the online world or even purpose in life? Next is issues of personal identity in online communities. Number 1. The characterization question. Indeed, it refers to those characteristics that people take to define themselves as persons or to distinguish themselves from others. Thus, in these respects, if people have an identity crisis, they are unsure of their most characteristic properties and who they are as a persons. Within online communities, people have the impression that they can deliberately choose and express the characteristics that define themselves by putting together their profile. So the next one of the issues of personal identity in online communities is the self-other relation question. Identity is therefore seen as embedded in social relations and as dynamic, contextual, and relation. Social representations and the dynamics of positioning between self and others define identities. Moreover, within this matter, also other moral issues come up as relevant. One of these issues regards responsibility, which is a core component of relationship with others, and my sense of freedom. That means that how I define myself also through my relationship with others is relevant when discussing what for I consider myself accountable. In this context, identity itself matters practically. So the last one topic for online personal identity crisis is understanding identity issues in virtual cognitive niches. An epistemically and cognitively rich framework in which users can get more or less relevant data, and a socially fertile environment in which users can interact through particular actions and see each other through profiles and avatars. The latter point also highlights another feature of online communities. They allow agents to present themselves as community members in any way they want. More than that, not only offline and online worlds are drastically different in terms of availability of epistemic resources, ways of self-presentation and self-profiling, and self-other interactions, but the online experience of community members profoundly affects their offline dimension. Thus, it is also essential to consider a feedback loop between online and offline domains in any analysis of identity construction and maintenance. That's all for my topic. Thank you.
Good day, everyone, and today I will be talking about the importance of anonymity on the internet. Now, considering what has been discussed before, you would already know why anonymity is being challenged, but just as a quick refresher, being anonymous in the internet means that a person's real life identity is separated from the actions they make on the internet. As the person and the action is separated, the person is less likely to face the consequences of their actions. This is problematic for when then the person has done a terrible deed, as they cannot be easily punished for it. However, I would like to argue back against why this would be such a big deal to remove anonymity altogether. Now, in defense of anonymity, with the advent of data collection and surveillance, it might be tempting to say that the continuous loss of anonymity in the internet is a good thing, but the threat of killing anonymity in the cyberspace can compromise many beneficial aspects of the internet that we have taken for granted time and time again. Now, here's one big assumption about this. Though a lack of anonymity does allow us to more easily punish wrongdoers, there is simply no guarantee that the punishment is just or even aligns to the truth at all. As phenomena like cancel culture has already shown us, people are harassed and berated over small things or even things that are not true. Now, anonymity, though it can protect criminals and other wrongdoers, can also protect innocent victims from getting harassed and bullied as well. Anonymity in this context is a double-edged sword, but there is a possible middle ground that can be found, and the benefit is simply too important to give up anonymity for. Now, another thing about anonymity is that it's simply a part of the job of some professions, just like journalism. This very concept of using anonymity to protect the innocent isn't exclusive or even new to the internet. Many journalists and reporters are only able to break their stories safely, specifically because they are anonymous. Certain groups may target these journalists and even the sources where these journalists and reporters get their information from for sharing such private information. But with anonymity, it allows them to serve the public by sharing their secrets safely. Now, another benefit of anonymity is that it really allows people to just focus on the message and nothing more. As you can see, another benefit of the nature of anonymity to decouple the person and the action is that it allows people to focus on the action itself rather than the person it is attached to. The way people react to an action or a statement is usually affected by who performs or says such things. By removing the cause of such bias, people can focus on the message itself. That is all I can say about the importance of anonymity on the internet. Thank you for watching.
And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening and watching.